Hello and welcome back to One Last Night. We'll be continuing where we left off, which, if you recall, is after Xavier was victorious over the Weevil. And Dorian was also recounting how he met the lion, whose name I still forget. And basically, to me, it kind of felt one-sided, the story. Like, we're not getting the full picture. Because why does this guy have so much animosity over you unless he is just that narcissistic? But yeah, it is possible. He is just a massive narcissist, and what Dorian told everyone is, real. It's true. But anyways, eventually I suppose we will find that out. Anywho, so yeah, what else? I guess that's all that happened. And oh, well, somebody is causing a commotion, and we're about to see who it is and what they want. So, without further ado, let us continue One Last Night. Will you just go and get them already? I'm only following orders. I paused, listening to the voice. It was a woman speaking, and she sounded familiar. And you expect me to believe that you can handle it alone? It's 2 injured people compared to one healthy person. I can handle it. I don't know. It's still a variable. I can prove to you just how capable I can be against 2 opponents. You and your buddy there already look like you got your shit rocked. I'd say that'd be even to who I'm escorting. Dude, just let her go. But I'm not getting punched again. The first bandit let out a sigh. Fine. He cleared his throat before calling out to the crowd, not even bothering to look for whoever he needed. Dorian and Xavier, your escort to see the nurse is here. I blinked, surprised that we were actually being taken to be treated properly. I'd figured that we'd have to wait until the end of Wonderland to be able to see her. Xavier beamed and slowly stood up, clearly excited to get out of here, but still cautious of his wounds. I followed suit and looked to our 2 new friends. Before I could get a word on, Treat pulled the 2 of us into a hug. We'll see you guys later, alright? Make sure to rest up, and you'll be back to peak condition in no time. Thanks, and if we're not back in time to see your fights, then just know that we're rooting for you. The Wolverine gave a laugh. No need to worry about that. Wonderland is going to be lasting 3 days this time. You 2 already made a splash today, so they'll probably spread its return contenders out to keep it interesting. The thought of having to sit through 2 more days like it today sounded like an actual hell. As we turned to leave, we raised our arms to wave as I did the same and caused Treat's shirt to rise up and expose some of his midriff. If my eyes hadn't drifted there, I doubt that I would have noticed that there was a small but noticeable mark on the left side of his torso. A burn scar. My mind begins to spin as we turn and walk to where our escort was waiting, but the sight of her distracted me immediately before I could give it much thought. Standing at the entrance was a tall but muscular woman, a bandana covering her muzzle. She was a German Shepherd, as evidenced by her color scheme and other canine features. She wore an aqua blue sleeveless top, showing off the definition of her arms and the dragonfly tattoo that curled its way up her right bicep. To match, she wore blue jeans with a belt, while a dangling gold and blue earring hung from each ear. I tripped over my own feet, trying to find myself stable as we approached her. What was she doing here? She laughed at my stumble and turned to the guards. See what I mean? Hardly a threat. She reached a hand to his cheek and patted him a few times. Now how about you be a good boy and bind their arms as an apology for the hassle that you put me through for a simple request, You wouldn't want Alistair to find out you disobeyed him now, would you? The bandit grumbled to himself as he bound our hands in front of us, handing the leads to our escort. Perfect. That'll be all, sweetheart. With that, she turned and led us out of the room towards our destination. We walked in silence as we were led through the passage that had brought us here, and back to another building, only to be led into another secret passage in that lower level. I wasn't sure where it led, but that wasn't the biggest thing on my mind right now. I continued to play quiet and follow until there was time that we could talk without the risk of being overheard. We were brought out of the tunnel into another storage building, confirming my earlier theory of there being more than just one building. She nodded to the other bandits as we passed, taking us up a floor to where more of the office-like rooms were located. There were very few others here. Most had been taken off to watch or help with the Wonderland. The bandit leading us stopped, listening intently and glancing in both directions. Quickly and without warning, she ushered us into a room and closed the door with a loud sigh. Fucking hell, that was stressful. I'm impressed with myself that I've managed to get this far, but this was an entire setup. Go on, you can now applaud me. Xavier was looking at her utterly confused while all I could do was stare in shock. Holy shit, it really is you. In the flesh, D. Bring it in. The German Shepherd wrapped me in a tight hug. I tried to return it, but I was unable to due to the bindings. I let out a grunt of pain as she squeezed my unattended injuries with all her strength. Quickly, the canine drew back. Right, sorry. Got carried away with the moment there. Let me take care of those. She started to remove her restraints, prompting Xavier to speak up. Dorian, why do you seem to know so many of these bandits? Is there something that you're not telling me? This drew a laugh from her. I like this twink already. He and Oliver would get along, I think. Aside from the questionable fashion choice, that is. You really know how to find them, D. Xavier muttered something under his breath. Why does everyone keep calling me a twink today? I watched as the gears in his head clicked into place with a start. Wait, are you from Haven? She beamed at him, lowering the bandana from her muzzle. Smart too. He got it with next to no context. The name's Thea, bat boy. They extended a hand, gripping Xavier's hard as she gave it a firm shake. Xavier. A strong name. I like it. No wonder you did so well in your fight. The brutality at the end was a bit overkill, but admittedly, I'd do the same in your shoes. I stepped forward, bringing the shepherd's attention back to me. Look, Thea, I'm excited to see you here, probably more than you know, but I don't understand. Why are you here? How are you here? She stared at me, her face mirroring the confusion that I'd been feeling since I first saw her here. You mean Raya didn't tell you? Tell me what? She rubbed her forehead, seeming to gather her thoughts. Damn it, Raya, you owe me for this. She took a deep breath. A few months ago, Raya approached me and asked for my help. They'd learned about the existence of this bandit group and heard whispers of what they were up to. They were concerned about what was going on, and after some discussion, they thought the best way to stay safe and learn more was to put a man on the inside. Or, in this case, a woman. She put on a satisfied smirk at that. She knew that they could trust me to get the job done, and as such, I figured, hey, what's one more burn scar anyway, and I accepted the offer. She told me that it was a secret mission and that I couldn't tell anyone, so naturally I told Oliver the second that she left. He didn't want me to go, but knew that I was more than capable for the job. After a makeover to help me look the part, about 2 weeks later, I left on my mission and infiltrated what we now know is called the Ignited. Kind of a tacky name if you ask me. I was reeling over this new information, questioning why Raya had hidden something so big from me. It also explained why I hadn't been able to say goodbye to her by the time that I left Haven. She was already spying here for them. After I built up enough trust, I was able to get messages out by going on night patrols and leaving notes at a designated location. In exchange, they left some for me as well. Sorry I couldn't have been there when you left, by the way. You'll have to tell me all about what happened while you were away. But anyway, as more people were kidnapped, I'd learned just what Wonderland was and how close they were to running another one. I sent an emergency message to Haven and haven't heard back since. Then you two arrived. The pieces all began to fall into place. The messenger from Haven hadn't been sent with the news of Marshall, but to warn me of the bandit group led by my ex. Haven was on lockdown because they couldn't risk more people being kidnapped, and we were all kidnapped in order to start Wonderland. It had all been a series of unfortunate coincidences. Thea continued. I was planning to leave at the end of this edition with either that Wolverine hunk or my fellow trans hyena, but now that you two are here, I can take one of you instead. The two of us were silent for a moment before Xavier spoke what we were both thinking. Only one of us? She sighed. More than that poses a big risk. This wouldn't be the first case of an escape attempt. It'd mean that I'd be locked up like the two of you if we fail and leave Haven down. Not to brag or anything, but I'm an important part of its leadership. She turned to look at me. Which is why I'd like to extend the opportunity to take you with me, Dorian. I blanched. Wait, what? With your help, there's no doubt that we could organize an assault on this place. If we do enough damage to their inventory, rescue their prisoners, maybe fuck with some of the lying dickheads' personal supplies, we could cause an internal conflict. It might just be enough to get them to disband even. So, what do you say? I barely even thought about it before the words left my mouth. No. No? I shook my head, catching Xavier's surprised reaction in the corner of my eye. As much as I'd like to do that, Thea, I can't. My conscience wouldn't allow me to accept getting out while others are trapped here. The duo stared at me, likely confused as to why I wasn't taking the opportunity to escape. Wasn't this what I wanted? A chance to get out and continue searching for Marshall? Which is why you need to take Xavier instead. Whoa, hold on. Why me? I don't even know anybody from Haven. Your connections there would be much more influential and you'd accomplish a lot more. Because I know what you've been through, and I know the last thing that you want is to be trapped again. The bat shifted uncomfortably. Our whole kidnapping was never supposed to happen. You deserve the chance to be able to live a life not trapped in one place. You've had your share of burdens recently, Xavier. Allow me to give you this break, please. He was silent for a moment, before wiping a tear and smiling at me. Thanks, Dorian. The bat then threw himself into a tight hug around me. Anytime, kid. We stood there in our embrace for a short while until Thea cleared her throat, ending the moment. I couldn't help but feel a heat rise to my cheeks. Thea eyed me suspiciously before continuing. Well then, Xavier, looks like you'll be getting to see Oliver sooner than I thought. God, how I miss his wit right now. I'm sure that he misses you all the same. Did your lovely twin give you some acting tips before you left? Because you were quite convincing. Nope, that was all me, Dee. It's easy to blend in when nobody is willing to challenge you. She flexed. Guns of steel and a boisterous personality can take you a long way, boys. Keep working towards it, and maybe someday you too can be like me. A sassy blacksmith. Damn right. I know that without this apocalypse, I would have been the next worldwide icon little girl dreamed about. I smiled mischievously. Or had nightmares about. She glared. Careful, Dorian. I can still bench press your ass up and over the side of a building. I raised my hands in defeat, causing her to smile. As much as I'd love to catch up more, we need to get you two to Nadia's office. If we waste any more time, they'll know something is up. Thea grabbed the rope and gestured to put our hands up so that she could rebind them. Since I'm going to be taking the bat here with me, though, I'd appreciate it if you could get us some help, Dorian. What do you mean? Even though Wonderland will be over and the bandits will be partying to celebrate, it would help if you could get distractions going. The less guards roaming the halls, the better. If you can manage a way to distract Alistair too, that would be perfect. He's their boss for a reason, and that reason being that he packs some serious firepower. I nodded, my curiosity piquing at what the line had that could tame so many people. Thea turned to gaze to Xavier. Lastly, find a way to get yourself to the nurse's office for the final fight. It's the easiest point of extraction for me to get the both of us out of here. You both get all that? Loud and clear. Excellent. She placed an ear to the door, listening for a few moments before pulling the bandana back over her muzzle. All right, you two, back to being miserable. It's time to take action. With that, our spy flung the door open and brought us back onto the hallway and towards our destination. It wasn't much further of a walk from where Thea had taken us aside to be able to reach the nurse's office. It was an average-sized room with proper beds spread out across it. I wasn't sure where they'd managed to find them, but I considered myself lucky they did. The room was empty, save for the person that we were looking for tucked into a desk at the back corner of the room. Nadia, I believe, Thea called her earlier, was an older cheetah woman, a pair of small glasses sitting at the bridge of her nose. She was thin, almost frail-looking, wearing a dark, thin woolen turtleneck tucked into a pair of plain, tan slacks. She brought her eyes up to us as we approached. Took you long enough. I thought that it was clear that they were to be brought directly to me after their fights. I'm sorry, Nadia. I tried. No, that is Dr. Adebayo to you. I may not have received my doctorate, but I have more than earned it. Right, apologies, Dr. Adebayo. As I was saying, the other bandits there weren't letting them leave, so I had to take it up with Alistair. She shook her head. Of course they did. Most of you seem to have nothing but full-baked ideas of how to make others suffer in those empty heads of yours. Nadia looked back down as Thea sighed, knowing that she wasn't going to make any progress with a cheetah. The three of us stood there, waiting awkwardly before her gaze returned to us. Well, what are you waiting for? Both of you take a seat. You are no longer needed here, girl. I could see the anger burning in Thea's eyes, ready to spill over. I nudged her with my foot to get her back to composing herself. She glared at me before her expression softened. Thea untied our leads and walked to the exit, sparing one last glance at us and lowering her bandana to mouth 2 words. Good luck. I nodded in understanding, and then she was gone. Xavier and I sat across from each other for a moment, unsure of what to do as the silence stretched on. After a moment, Nadia stood from behind her desk with a first aid kit in hand and moved towards us to begin whatever treatment she had planned. Now, which one of you will be first? Her eyes darted to me and then to Xavier, stopping with recognition of the bat. Ah, I see you fought on the first day. Quite unfortunate. Well, can't say my luck has been too great recently, so this was about par for the course. He started to laugh, but cringed in pain from his abdominal wound. Nadia's eyes lit up in concern as she finally noticed it. That decides it. We are treating you first. Remove the shirt so that I can properly look at your wounds. But what about... He will be fine. He's injured too. He will be fine. Dressing an open wound like this is what matters more at the moment. Xavier looked like he wanted to say more, but she shushed him. Talking will only make him wait longer. Be silent. The bat looked at me helplessly, but all I could do was shrug. I wanted Xavier treated first anyway, so this was the best outcome. That comment that she made earlier clearly had ground to stand on as she began her treatment. Her hands were quick and efficient. First, she'd taken a bucket with warm water that had been prepared from before we arrived and began gently dabbing at the area around the wound. Once the dried blood from both Xavier and the faded had been cleared, she grabbed a clean cloth and some strong-smelling disinfectant to gingerly apply to the wound. Xavier sucked in a sharp breath and grunted, the sting from the fluid causing him pain. Poor kid. Taking a roll of bandages, she tightly bound his abdomen in the gauze and tied it off, securing it in place with a bobby pin. Done. You were lucky the wound was not deep, otherwise you would have needed stitches and months of bed rest. Do not overdo it, or your wound will reopen. Are there any other injuries that you sustained that I should look at? Well, I had my shoulder dislocated, but a friend of ours popped it back in. Oh? She moved to his shoulder, applying pressure to the area to check it. It was well done. I presume the Wolverine did this? Yep. Ah, that boy knows his stuff. I wanted to make him my assistant, but he would not budge on his own goals. The line also denied my request. That's too bad. Do things get busy around here? Not really. Only when this damned tournament rolls around. Otherwise, it is these fools coming to me for minor aches and pains. I have treated children with stronger pain capacities. Nadia smiled to herself. Sometimes I like to tell them absurd things that they must do in order to feel better or send them on fetch quests. They never even question it due to my accent. That is how I know that they are all nothing but idiots. Xavier returned the smile and shot me a wink. He really did have a natural charm in dealing with people. Either way, I'm glad that you're here to help people like us. How did you end up here anyway? Her face darkened, and she shifted her attention to Xavier's hand. Raising it, she began to undo the bandage in order to rebind it. I was tricked by someone that I had known long ago. He wanted my help, and I thought that it would be for a good cause. But I was wrong. I am nothing more than a prisoner like you now, just with a little more freedom. She finished with Xavier's hand. She held onto it for a moment, gently rubbing the back of his with her thumb. You're a kind soul, young bat. Let it guide you and provide hope for those that no longer feel it. Be the light for those in the dark. Xavier nodded, a sullen look on his face. I can try. She reached up and patted his cheek, a soft smile lingering with sadness in her eyes. And that shall be good enough. She drew her hand back away from him and brought her attention properly to myself, that look of neutrality back on her face. Your turn. What injuries did you sustain? I was hit in my right thigh, left wrist, and on the back by these flesh-eating blob monstrosities, as well as slashed across the forehead by some claws on my right side. Then I was thrown viciously against the wall backwards and bludgeoned in the back of the head by one of the guards. Why did they bludgeon you? Xavier chimed in. He wanted to fight in my place. She shook her head. I will treat you, but if you continue to have disregard for your own life, you will not receive the same aid. I understand. Good. Now remove your clothes so that I can get started. A few hours later, I laid back in one of the makeshift hospital beds and stared up at the ceiling. Like Xavier, I had been lucky my wounds weren't deep and hadn't required stitching. The bleeding had stopped amongst all of them and would likely heal quickly. Unfortunately, my head hadn't been so lucky. The trauma from the bandit and the wall impact had left me to nurse a minor concussion for the next week or so. A bandit had dropped by some time after to send a report back to Alistair, and Nadia informed them that we would be spending the night here for further observation. He tried to object to that, but she quickly shut him down and sent him on his way. It was clear by now the first day of Wonderland had finished, but rather than feel any sort of relief on the fact that I felt nothing but anxious and sad. Nobody else had been brought into the office today, meaning Xavier and I were the only two survivors. Not only that, it left only 2 days for me to form and coordinate an escape plan for Thea and Xavier. It was all a lot to handle. I stared across the room to look at the bat, sleeping soundly in his cot. I'm sure that he was glad to have not to sleep alone in the dark space again. Meanwhile, Nadia sat at her desk in the corner reading a small book. I couldn't make out the title, but the cover was worn from reuse. I had a time limit to all of this, and I couldn't waste any more. We'd be taken out of here come morning, and then left a few chances to try and convince her to help us with our plan. It was now or never, but I should at least try to play things smoothly with her, like Xavier had. Maybe she would also warm up to me. So, Nadia, what? No. She didn't look up from her book. No? I did not give you the right to address me by my first name. You are going to call me Dr. Adebayo. I cringed internally, chastising myself for slipping up already after remembering the earlier. Right, apologies, Dr. Adebayo. All I was going to ask was, what was the book that you were reading? No response. What is it called? She flipped the page. And why do you want to know? I'm sorry? What does it mean to you what book I am reading? There is nothing to be gained from such simple conversation. What about me makes you think that I am a woman who cares for vapid and empty pleasantries? I quieted, unsure what to say. I think that it is clear to the both of us that there is something on your mind that you want to talk about, that you have deemed important enough to interrupt my reading. So? She paused, finishing the page that she was on, and sliding a bookmark in to look at me in the eyes. Speak your piece or hold it in so that I may go back to reading what limited free time I have on my own. Well, no time like the present. We need your help with something, a plan that we only need you to play a small part in. It's simple, really. All you need... No. But I haven't even finished what I was saying. Yet my answer remains the same. Can I at least finish? No, because I already know what you're going to say. And what is that? An edge of frustration has creeped into my voice at her dismissive attitude to my pleas for help. Do not raise your voice at me, boy. You are as easy to read as my book. She dropped it onto her desk for emphasis with a thump, standing up and walking over to where I sat. You plan to try to escape this place, to take your friend and flee, but it will not work. You are not the first to try and certainly will not be the last to fail. We have someone on the inside, though. The bandit who brought us here earlier. She's been spying for months and can help get at least one person out. She laughs. If she is your spy, then your chances are even lower. Nothing about the girl has been settled since the day she arrived. She could also be the first to turn her back on our captors. And what happened to the last one? I believe you have already met him. After all, he helped your friend here earlier. My mind flashed to the burn scar that I'd seen on Treat's midriff earlier. So he had been one of the bandits and was caught trying to escape, resulting in his imprisonment. But why had he joined in the first place? I couldn't make sense of it. Even still, Thea wouldn't be trying this if she didn't have a plan. At the end of Wonderland, the bandits will all be too busy celebrating to put up a proper guard. How do you know this? Because that's what she told me, and I trust her wholeheartedly. And how does she know this? I assume because she's been learning about them, she'll be able to guess what will happen. You are saying these words, but you do not hear the problems amongst them. I scoff in annoyance. What problems? Guess and assume. Neither of these mean that you truly know. You and her are doing nothing but making predictions that will only make things worse. If you want a chance to leave this place, you need certainties. I refuse to help with a plan based on nothing but luck. It's not luck, It is what? There is no stable foundation to your words. If you let me explain. There is nothing to explain that you have not already said. I have entertained your foolishness long enough. She turned her back to me and the patience that I'd been holding on to broke. Just fucking listen. No. She whipped back again, leaning down and pointing a finger in my face. You listen to my words and listen closely. Everything I have heard from you, from your actions today and from what Xavier told me when he was here yesterday, have told me everything that I need to know. You are careless and brash, leading the way without giving anything proper thought or stopping to consider how to act. You chose to live in that moment with little thought of the future. Your urge to escape this place is one we all share, yet you still focus on yourself and how this can benefit you. You cannot go through with this, because this is yet again you throwing your life to the wind. In a perfect world, where we all make it out of here, what happens when you and the bat are out together and encounter danger? You will continue that recklessness and endanger him with yourself. If that time comes, he will throw himself in the way to protect you. That boy admires and cares for you more than you know. He is compassionate, considerate, caring, and a bright hope for the future that we all want to see. But if he puts himself in the way of harm like that, injuring himself from your actions and resulting in what could be his death, he is not the one to blame for caring too much. Your actions affect more than just yourself, and you seem to forget that. Should his light go out, the future will only grow dimmer. His blood will be on your hands, and your hands alone. Act smarter and do better, or we will all suffer. With that, she stood back up, looking down at me in distaste. Do you understand? Not able to find my voice, I simply nodded at her words. She took that for her answer and sat back at her desk, picking up where she left off in her book. She was right. Every word that had left her mouth had hit home, and I knew that there was nothing that I could do at that moment to change her mind. If we were going to survive this, if all of us were going to make it out alive, we'd have to exercise the utmost caution. I'd have to do better and think harder than I had been. This wasn't some game where I could simply set a checkpoint to restart at. There were consequences to my actions that I could not be undone, that I had to weigh properly. I look back at the sleeping bat, my chest filled with worry over his future. If I could help him bring about that future Naida had imagined, then that's what I had to do. Tomorrow would be a new day, a day of planning and preparations for what hopefully would be a successful escape. Rather than extinguish the flame for my desire to escape, Nadia's speech had fanned it further. I would give it my all to make guarantees and account for possibilities of what could go wrong and to make sure that things weren't left to luck. If I couldn't make enough, then we would call it off until the next best opportunity. I laid back in bed, pulling up the covers and feeling the day's exhaustion begin to settle in. I needed the rest for what was to come. My future was in my hands, and I wasn't going to let it slip away. It wasn't often that I dreamt, but on the few occasions that I did, a faint memory playing behind my closed eyes as I drifted off to sleep was the most that I ever really got. The most common thing for me was pure darkness, a simple void I existed in until I woke up the next day. That was how I was used to my nights going. Tonight was different. As I drifted off to sleep, I found myself in a gray space. The emptiness stretched on forever, seemingly infinite in scale. I stood there, unsure of what was happening, when I finally felt something cold on my feet. On instinct, I took a step forward and realized that I was walking in a thin layer of fluid. I looked down at my feet to check and saw firsthand that my body had changed. It wasn't a physical change. I still had the same outline that I knew belonged to me, rather, it appeared as though it was made of static. I reached my arms up in disbelief, staring at the glitching, constantly feeling textures that was in their place. I moved one to touch the other, only to find that I wasn't able to feel anything but the cool liquid on the ground. I wasn't sure where I was or what had occurred, but I couldn't just stand there and wait for something to happen. Instead, I took a step forward, my feet suddenly making contact with the water below. As I walked, I tried to call out into space, but was unable to use my voice. There was no sound here. Though part of me wanted to freak out, there was something eerily calm to me about the entire experience. It was as though I was familiar with being here, yet I couldn't place why. Time seemed to become irrelevant as I strode forward through the nothingness, unsure how long I'd been walking for. After a while, I heard a noise in the distance. As I approached, the water at my feet seemed to be drawn towards it as well. In the floor, some meters away, was a round black hole that the water was rushing towards. I approached and tried to peer into it, but nothing was to be seen. The water vanished after curling around the lips. I watched it and waited for any kind of change, but none came. Instead, a command began to build in my head until it was all that I could think about. Jump. So I took a step forward and jumped straight down into the hole. It was like I was submerged in water, the icy feeling in my feet spreading through my whole body as I floated. The noise from before, as well as the hole that I jumped through, had vanished. Alone, I floated through nothingness, until I felt myself pulled forward at a rapid speed, my body hurtling towards an unknown destination with nothing that I could do to stop myself. Then, just as sudden, I stopped. Before me now was a sphere of light, pulsing in space yet illuminating nothing. My body no longer responded in my efforts to move, the only thing cooperating being my eyes. As I looked into the space around the orb, I realized that I wasn't alone here. 3 other static people floated around the sphere with me. One was short and skinny, one tall and average, and the third was noticeably smaller than the rest. They looked almost child-sized. The 4 of us hovered around the light, unmoving as a voice sounded within our heads. The story has begun. The tale weaves before your eyes, even as you remain unaware. Everything now remains undecided. The path forward is not set, but shaped and molded by what's to come. The pieces are all in place, the roles set to embrace, to enable your destinies. The false hero, the one meant to guide the chosen on their path yet has strayed from their own, trust in your experience. The hope, the one creating a course for our hero without realizing and giving them a chance against what is to come, trust in yourself. The variable, the one whose role is not yet defined. They are a piece to play that will change the story in ways that cannot be predicted. What they do could aid or hinder the path of our hero. Trust in your heart. The lost, the one who has let desire overcome them and turn them to a worse fate. So far gone are they, it is unclear whether they will ever find themselves again. There is no trust for you to find. The voice stopped, pausing for a moment before repeating itself. The false hero, trust in your allies. The hope, trust in yourself. The variable, trust in your heart. The lost, there is no trust for you to find. Then it repeated again, and again, and again. After the fifth time, the light gave one final pulse before it seemingly exploded and consumed the space around us. Suddenly, images were flashing before my eyes: ruined cities, churches, laboratories, empty fields, overgrown buildings. There were too many, too fast for me to process any of them, yet a sense of recognition filled me as though I knew some of these places. As the images played, the sheer sensory overload of it all began to overtake me, and though I hadn't been breathing, it no longer feels like I can. And then, in an instant, the void returned, and I remained paralyzed with the others before the light. Begin. I took one last look at their shapes as the voices said that, and then my body was sent rocketing back through the darkness towards myself, back towards consciousness. To be continued. Well, it seems that there is something going on that we have yet to be privy to. Um, I mean, it could be assumed, of course, that there was always something going on, given, the monsters, the fallen, and how it all happened. But now apparently there is something not guiding, but watching all these events happening. And it's anybody's guess as to who these other other three characters are. Um, I'm assuming that Dorian is the false hero because he is presented as the main narrator or the main character, I guess. But it kind of feels like this isn't his story. Like, sure, he's it's being presented. He's writing in the diary. We get to read it ever so often and whatnot. But perhaps that's sort of like what's that called? A red herring, maybe. Um, I mean, if he is a false hero, then Xavier is probably the hope. Um, the the lost is probably what's his face? The lion, and what was the other one? The other one is probably I want to say Marshall, maybe. I don't know. I guess we'll find out as the story progresses. But it's write down in the comments what you think about who is who right now based on what we have. It may also be that the the false hero is actually Dorian. Yeah, it's Dorian, right? The line. Because he presents himself as the main character in his story in his head, but he clearly isn't. Mm, hmm. The lost could also be the child that Marshall saved because there's four characters, one of them being, I'm assuming, Xavier, and but one of the characters being smaller than the rest. And out of all the characters there, who was smallest of the rest that have been shown so far? And that would be the kid that kind of got his parents killed, um, who was eventually rescued by Marshall, or at least the character that we think is Marshall. But yeah. Anyways, so write down in the comments what you think. And yeah, what else? It is true that the escape plan as it stands would probably get them killed or get someone killed. It's probably not going to work. So, yeah, it's better that they think of something better before they execute it. Mm, hmm. It probably would be better if, uh, what's his name? Is Dorian the lion, or am I getting it wrong? I don't know. God damn it, I'm blanking on the names. Anyways, so it's better for the main character to stay. Yeah, Dorian is the main character. God damn it. Um, so it's better for Dorian to stay and Xavier to go because uh, I kind of feel that the line would not be as aggressive towards Dorian as he would be towards Xavier, the bat. Once he finds out, like, oh, prisoners escaped. Hmm, who do we punish for this? But yeah, anyways, so write down in the comments what you think, and I can already hear you guys correct. No, his name is this, his name is that. Stop calling him that name. Blah 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 blah. Really, I don't care. As long as I say it correctly when I'm reading it, then fine. Afterwards, I don't care. Anyways, but yeah, so write down in the comments what you think so far, and thank you all for watching slash listening. If you would like to play One Last Night yourself, you can do so by going down into the link in the description for the One Last Night Twitter page, which will have a direct link to the itch.io page where you can download it and play it. But in case Twitter has exploded or imploded, like that submarine, then you can just go to itch.io and in the little search box put One Last Night and the visual novel will be there, and you can just download it there yourself. And if you would like to support the project, then I will also put a link down for their Patreon. I'm assuming they have a Patreon. I forget now. It's been a while. And that should give you early access to builds of One Last Night. And I think it was like a month difference, or maybe like a little bit more, since they announced this chapter. So you would get it way in advance. Yeah. And what else? And I'm assuming they also have like little bits and pieces, like works in progress, images and stuff like that for you guys to look at and enjoy that other people won't. And also my coffee, you guys already know. You can donate if you want. It's not necessary, and it is greatly appreciated when you do, though. Trust me. And while the goal was not met for Soul Creek, I think I will be reading it up to where it is now. And I think there was just a new update. I think it's called a Lost or something like that. I will be reading up to there. Whether or not I keep reading, though, depends on whether or not I like the story. And yeah, so that a lot of factors. And I mean, if you guys do end up reaching the goal before then, though, I guess I would end up having to add it regardless to the permanent rotation of visual novels that I read. But yeah, anywho, so yeah, there's that. And yeah, I guess that's it for now, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.